Hello everyone, Storm here, and today I'm going to show you my Magicka Warden PvP build for the Elsweyr patch. I know this build has taken me quite some time to make. The reason for that is that I've been locked outside of EP, which is the faction where this character is for the last campaign due to faction locks. But instead of focusing on that, we're going to focus on non-CP for the most part in this video. But since this build works for both CP and non-CP, I wanted to start it up by showing you the stats for CP, and then we'll go into non-CP campaign and show the stats over there as well. So let's jump right into it. If we're gonna buff ourselves up real quick, and we go into our stats, we can see that we have on the back bar 54k max Magicka when we are buffed. On the front bar, it is down to 48k because we are using a little bit of a different setup on each bar, but we're going to get to that in a moment. But on the back bar, where our shield is, and it is most important there, our max Magicka is at 54k. Our max health, if we just buff ourselves up yet again, our max health is at 29k right now, but that is because we have Emperorship buff right now. Usually it's at about 27k instead, which is a lot still, and very good. It's important to have a high health pool for our shields to be strong just as much as it is to have a high Magicka pool. And then for our stamina, we have 16k, which is really more than enough for everything we need. Our Magicka recovery is at 1400, which is really good, considering as we also have the betting Natch buff, the Britain passives, and harness Magicka, which gives us even more sustain. 1400 is way more than enough. We really never run out of Magicka with this build, but we'll get to that in a moment when we focus a little bit more on how to play the build and how to benefit from the skills. But for our spell damage, if we go to our front bar and of course buff ourselves up yet again, our spell damage is currently at 2k, but that is before we use our monster helm, which is Balor this patch. And when we use our ultimate, as you can see on the front bar, we are going to have over 3.1k spell damage, which is really high. And our offensive potential is so strong, having the 31k spell damage and 50k max Magicka. We do so much damage, and at the same time our sustain is so good, and our resistances, as you can see in a moment when we buff up, our resistances are at 28k spell resistance and 24k physical resistance, and of course 3k critical resistance, as I like having in all my builds. So very tanky as well. And for our spell penetration, we have 9k, which is not the highest in the world, but is still very high, and together with our awesome damage and insane max Magicka, gives us a really great offensive potential. So here we are in non-CP, and now if we just buff ourselves up real quick and look at our stats, we have almost 46k max Magicka on our back bar, and on our front bar we have over 40k max Magicka still, almost 41. Our max health is at almost 25k, and our max stamina is at almost 14k, so that is very good. Obviously, if we look here, we have on our front bar, our spell damage is at 2k still, and if we use our ultimate, just like in the CP zone, we have over 3k spell damage, which is very nice. Then we have for our resistances, if we just buff ourselves up real quick, we have 28k spell resistance and almost 24k physical resistance, and our crit resist is obviously a lot lower, but it's almost at 2k, which is not bad, and our spell pen at 5k as well. And our Magicka recovery, of course, is at 1300, which is not very far off from what we had in CP. So our stats in here are pretty good as well, and these are the stats in most of my clips later on, since my gameplay was mostly in non-CP, as I've mentioned. Next to our sets, this patch, as I've mentioned, we are using Balor instead of Scoria. The reason for that is that Scoria took quite a bit of a nerf this patch. Now it is telegraphed very, very easily, so targets can, without any issues, see that there's a Scoria proc on the way to them, kind of like Meteor has the circle around your feet and you know to block it. The same is with Scoria, except it's a red telegraph instead of blue. You know exactly when a Scoria proc is about to hit you, and then you can block it or prepare a heal or kind of move away from the aggro so that you don't get bursted down, which was really the great benefit of Scoria, helping you burst targets down. So now, since they know to prepare to a burst, they can very, very easily mitigate it, and so it's just not a good set anymore as much as it used to be. So this patch we are using Balorg. Since we have a great ult generation, using Balorg, which is a set that bases around your ult, is very, very good for us, and as we are Wardens, ult gen is really our strong suit. So Balorg, what it does is, other than giving us for the one piece a little bit of spell damage, it also gives us twice the amount of ultimate we use as spell damage for 10 seconds whenever we activate our ultimate ability. So when we are maxed out on our ultimate and we use it, it gives us a straight 1k spell damage right into our stat for 10 seconds. So whatever you're trying to do when you use your ultimate, be it being defensive and kind of defend your group with the major protection you gain from your ult, or be it going super offensive and trying to take down an enemy group or an enemy player, you can do it a lot more at ease since you have a lot more damage both for your ultimate itself and for the rest of your abilities while the ultimate is being used. So Balorg is just a really good set, it really fits our permafrost theme, and it just goes really well with this build. Next, we are using, just like last patch, Necropotence on our body, since it is a very, very good set for stacking max Magicka, which is what we're trying to do with this build. What it does is give us a ton of Magicka and then some more when we have a pet up. Since we have our Betty Netch as a Warden, keeping the pet up at all times is super easy, so we have the 5-piece bonus on us at all times. And then the new set we are using on our jewelry pieces and the sword and board on the back bar is Crafty Alfiq. And this set is just really, really good. It's basically Necropotence only with a slightly lower value without the requirement of a pet. So obviously, Necro is better for a Warden than Alfiq is, but why not stack both of them together and get even more max Magicka? This is how we get to the 54k max Magicka on our back bar with the 4 pieces or the 5 pieces of Crafty Alfiq, instead of only the 3 that we have on the front bar. The reason we only have 3 is because on the front bar weapon, we are using the Master's Lightning Staff. And the reason for that is because it buffs up our destructive touch by such a huge value that it really, really is worth giving up the 2 last pieces of Crafty Alfiq. The reason for that is, and we'll get to that later with our skills, but generally, Shock Clench has 3 different stages of damage. It deals initial damage to a target, it deals a dot to the target, and then it deals damage to nearby targets as well. And all 3 of those are being buffed in value by a ton from our Shock Clench when we have a Master's Lightning Staff. So basically, having this on the front bar and using Clench as our spammable makes this super, super strong, and it gives us such a great offensive burst, an AoE one at that too, that it's worth giving up those 2 pieces of Crafty Alfiq on the back bar, like giving them up on the front bar instead of having them just like we have on the back bar. If you cannot get the Master's Lightning Staff, since it is a little bit more difficult to get and requires at least partially competent group of PvE content, then if you can't have it, just use the Crafty Alfiq on the front bar Destro as well, and you will still have a lot of damage and you'll just have a higher Magicka value on the front bar as well. As for our weights, we are using 1 heavy piece and 1 medium piece on our monster set, since our 5-piece body set is light, the Necropotence of course. We are using 7 impen on our body, and we are using 2 tri-stat glyphs on our 2 big pieces, and on the last big pieces and the small pieces, we are using max Magicka enchant. Jewelry, we are using 1 arcane and 2 protectives with 2 Magicka recovery glyphs and 1 spell damage glyph. Our Master's Lightning Staff, just like last patch, is infused with a shock damage enchant to deal as much damage as possible whenever we light attack weave into a shock clench. And then on the back bar, we are using a defending Berserk enchant Crafty Alfiq axe which can be really any one hand, it doesn't matter when you use a certain board, and we are using a sturdy shield with a Max Magicka enchant to make our Max Magicka even higher on the back bar, as high as we possibly can. Next to our skills. The skills we're using in this build are the very same we've been using in my Raftstone build video, so if you guys watched it, you might want to skip up ahead, but if you haven't, I'm going to repeat the same skills that we've been using. And so on our front bar, we are using Fetcher Infection. It is just a really good dot that you're using to kind of chip off the health of your enemies so that your burst rotations can get them down all the way to 0. It's a really nice dot, strong value, and nothing much more to it. Dip Fissure is the big kicker. It's the big burst potential that Wardens have. It's just a really good damage that comes in after a short amount of time. So you can cast it before you do your burst, and then it hits together with it, and it adds a lot more damage to your rotation. So what you want to do with Dip Fissure is you cast it, and then you go into a light attack, into clench, and you hit all 3 of those together at your target while they already have a dot from your clench and from Fetcher Infection on them from before, and you try to take them down within one rotation with a bunch of skills hitting them at once. If that's not enough to take them down, you just repeat the process again and again until they are down. Usually it takes a big chunk of their health, and so it's very easy to take targets down that way. And if, of course, they are a more stronger target, then you can just use Northern Storm together with it and kind of have the 2 dots together with Light Attack, Shalk, Clench, and Northern Storm all hitting your target at once and take them all down. The great thing about it is that all of these targets of your actual burst, other than the Light Attack, hit multiple enemies. So your Shalk and your Shock Clench and your Northern Storm all hit multiple targets at once. So in BGs, you can basically go into a fight versus an enemy group, and your burst will many times hit all of them together and get multiple kills or damage the entire group a lot. Next to Bird of Prey, it is a nice skill, gives you the Major Expedition for 6 seconds, increasing your movement speed a little bit, but the main reason it is on our front bar is, while slotted, it gives you Minor Berserk, which increases your damage down by 8%, which is a massive amount of extra damage to all your offensive abilities on the front bar. Just a really good skill. Next, Shock Clench. We are using this for multiple reasons, but generally, it just deals so much damage to your enemy. It's a really strong skill, especially stronger with the Master Staff we are using, and it hits for an initial hit that is very strong. It applies a dot to your target, it stuns them for 2.5 seconds, and it hits enemies next to them. It's just a really good skill. We use it as our spammable, usually weaving in a light attack together with it, and it just hits really hard. It's a very good skill. Next, we are using Shimmering Shield. This is the least important skill on our bars, but it's still a very strong skill. It absorbs a lot of incoming damage in the form of projectiles. It gives you Magicka while absorbing enemy projectiles, and most importantly, it gives you Major Heroism for 6 seconds, increasing your ultimate generation, which with our build, together with Balorg and an ultimate that costs a lot, basically Shimmering Shield helps you keep getting your ultimate up again and again while you're fighting enemies, and that way you have your ultimate all the time, you max it up very frequently, so your Balorg has a stronger effect. Just really good skill overall. And last on our front bar, Northern Storm. We're using it on both our bars just because of its passive buff, which gives you 8% max Magicka on top of your existing pools. It's a really strong buff to your max Magicka, and since this is what we're doing with this build, we're stacking our max Magicka as high as we can. It's just a really strong skill. Now, in addition to the passive that you gain from having it slotted, using this skill is absolutely ridiculous. It hits for so much damage. In an AoE range, it hits all your targets within an 8 meters radius. It lasts 8 seconds, and it reduces their speed by 40%, deals all the damage to them, and gives you and your teammates major protection for 30 seconds. It's a really strong ultimate. And all of that together while giving you the 8% extra max Magicka just for being slotted, whether you're using the skill or it's not actively going right now. It's just a really, really strong skill overall, and that's why we have it on both our bars. Next, on the back bar, we are using Harness Magicka. It is such a good skill. When we are buffed up completely, if we use our harness on our back bar, the value of it is going to be higher than 10k, and we are inside Cyrodiil right now. In PvP, we're getting a shield that is stronger than 10k. And this shield also absorbs enemy spells and gives you over 2k Magicka for each enemy spell that it absorbs. So it is a huge mean of sustain. Plus, it takes so much damage, it absorbs so much damage that is being shot towards you from all kind of sources. And it just really, really good defensive skill. It keeps you up, it keeps you alive. It's just a really strong skill. Next is the Blueberry. It's just a really, really good skill that Warden have for extra sustain, for cleansing negative effects that are on us, for giving us major sorcery, and it also keeps our Necropotence buff active at all times as long as we keep this skill up, since it is considered a pet. So it's just an overall really, really strong skill, and this is why we're using it. Living Trellis is our biggest and almost only heal on this setup, because we also get a heal from using Betty Netch, but really Living Trellis is our main heal. It gives us a lot of burst heal when we use it several times, especially if you use it once, wait a few seconds, and then use it again. You get a big burst heal, but its main feature is the fact that whenever you get hit, you get health returned to you. And that also applies to when you get hit by an enemy skill that hits your Harness Magicka. Basically, the shield stops the hit. Your health pool doesn't go down, but it goes back up using Living Trellis. So if you have this skill already up on you for the 10-second duration it is on, you can just keep spamming Harness Magicka. Your health pool will only keep going up from the passive heal from Living Trellis for being attacked, and it won't go down because all the damage is being absorbed by the Harness Magicka. So it's a really good combo of two skills to keep you very, very tanky and healing a lot while you're in PvP. Next is Elusive Mist. I've been considering dropping this skill this patch and dropping Vampirism and just using Race Against Time instead, since it has the same features. But really, I just like Elusive Mist so much for open world PvP. In non-CP, it might be better to drop it just because Vampirism in NoCP is such a big hit, because whenever you get hit by a Dawnbreaker, you take so much damage, and when you're fighting a Magdk and a lot of fire skills, then being a vampire is really putting you at a disadvantage. But Elusive Mist in open world is just really, really good. When you see enemies dropping ultimates, or people are chasing you down, or trying to lock you behind away from your group, or into a lot of enemies that are chasing you, it prevents enemies from CCing you, because it gives you the immunity to all disabling and mobilization effects both together, and it gives you the extra speed and 75% damage reduction. Basically, when you need to go through a breach, when you need to escape multiple enemies, when you're trying to not get CC'd or slow down, Elusive Mist is the skill for you. It's a really good skill. But then again, it is the trade-off of being a vampire and getting Elusive Mist, or not having all the disadvantages of being a vampire and using Race Against Time instead, which gives you the speed and the mobilization immunity, but not the disabling immunity and not the damage reduction. Next is Ice Fortress. It's just a good skill that gives you your Major Resolve and Major Ward, which you need to have on pretty much every build in ESO, just buffing up your resistances by over 5k, both your physical and spell one. And this morph also gives you a minor protection for as long as it is applied. So while you have it on, which should be at all times, you take less damage from all sources by 8%, which is really, really huge. And then, of course, we are using Northern Storm again on our back bar, like I've mentioned. Just a really good skill, and we need it on our back bar for the extra max Magicka we gain from it. So that's it for the skills. Next, a little bit more relevant information about this build. We are using the Mage Mundus for extra max Magicka, of course. We are stage 4 from Prism right now, but I recommend, especially when you go into BGs, to go as a stage 1 vampire. You can use some Bloody Marrow or just use your leech synergies on multiple NPCs to reduce your vampirism stage, and it's very much recommended. We are using Tri-Stat Food to kind of get the max health, max Magicka, and max stamina all going in for us, and we have more than enough Magicka recovery, so we don't really need Witch Mothers here. And for our potion, we are using Tri-Stat Potion to once again refill all of our stats. No matter what stat we're currently lacking, we can use this one potion and gain all 3. For our race, as I mentioned before, we are playing Breton, just because it reduces the cost of our skills, gives us even more means of sustain by that. It gives us extra max Magicka, which is really, really good. We are always trying to stack our Magicka as high as we can with this. And it also buffs up our spell resistance by a little bit, which is never a bad thing. And so it's a really good race overall. You could run Dark Elf or High Elf instead of Breton on this build, and it'll have a little bit more damage and a little less sustain. But I feel like all 3 races are good here, and Breton is my personal favorite. For our champion points, we are using the exact same champion points as the last patch. So I'm just going to go over the CP very, very quickly. Feel free to pause the video if you'd like to see any of the trees. Next, I'm going to show you guys a few gameplay videos of my build. Once again, they are generally BG clips because I've been locked outside of Cyrodiil on this toon since faction lock is now a thing. So I hope you enjoyed the build video, everyone. I hope you learned something and maybe you would like to use this build for your own Magicka Wardens. I am around on Twitch, and I have a Discord server for all of you to join if you'd like to ask me any questions or see more of my content. So both those links will be down below. And once again, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to subscribe and like if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more content from me. And here are some gameplay videos, so enjoy.
I don't sleep, I just drive all night, try to find a place to rest my mind. I've been missing you, I've been missing you. You always give me time, you always give me time to get my head right. Baby, like a masterpiece, you're all that I wanna breathe in. Everything you are, everything you are. All around the world I'm seeing, waiting for my phone to ring. And you wanna lie, you one more time. What a gift it is to breathe, to live and die with your friends and me. Money never mattered, you can't take it with you at all. I feel my thoughts like a sonic boom. You always save me from impending doom. It's like I got a problem, my mind is taking over me. You always give me time, you always give me time to get my head right. Baby, like a masterpiece, you're all that I wanna breathe in. Everything you are, everything you are. All around the world I'm seeing, waiting for my phone to ring. And you wanna lie, you one more time. My close imagination sears me in. I've lost exciting thoughts, the thirst. Just take me out to Neverland again. So take me out to Neverland. Show me